it's Beauty Junkie. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be ranking 4 new foundations. These foundations I have done separate review videos on, and those were mostly my first impressions. So in this video I'll be giving you my updated thoughts on how these foundations wear and look and just my preferences. So I'll be doing some application, talking through what I like or don't like about these foundations. I'll be showing you some swatches, some photos up close, and I'll be putting all this information in order of my ranking from least favorite to favorite. So I have 4 foundations today that I'll be talking about. The number 1 de Chanel. This is part of their new number 1 collection. This came out this year, early 2022. I'll be talking about the Eldridge Seamless Skin Foundation, which came out in late 2021. The Peau Radiant Fluid Foundation Natural, which came out in late 2021. And the Charlotte Tilbury Beautiful Skin Foundation. This one came out early 2022. So these are all relatively new, so just ignore the hair today. I'm just going to be doing foundation. I'm not going to do a full face 4 times. We're just doing foundation. I'm not even going to do concealer or brows. So it's going to look a little bit funny because it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to tell how well a foundation looks just on its own. But that's all I'm focusing on today. Consistently, I'm going to be using the Victoria Beckham Cell Rejuvenating Primer in Original. So for each foundation application, not only using the primer, I'm going to be applying with my Real Technique sponge. This glass palette from Scott Barnes, going to be pumping the foundation on here. Going to be washing in between, washing the sponge. So this is damp. My face, I'm going to be washing obviously the makeup off in between each one. Also want to mention a couple disclaimers with what I look for in a foundation and what my skin type is. I have combination skin that is prone to congestion. Also, I get oily in my T-zone at the end of the day. I have texture, I have big pores. Foundation does not like my skin that much. It doesn't like to lay down flat. I have a lot of fuzz. All of that kind of plays into whether I'm going to like a foundation or not. I'm using a sponge mostly because that's the best way foundation applies to my skin. There are some foundations I'm going to be trying today that I have found brushes that work well with them, but just for consistency I'm using the sponge. Just gonna be honest, I'm gonna apply these foundations. I'm not gonna do like a full day wear test and a bunch of check-in, and you'll see what the foundations look like just applied, which I think is still helpful. But I'm just gonna anecdotally share based on me, my own observations, what these foundations did for my skin. You're not going to be able to see all of that, all of the things I described. You're not going to be able to see with your own eyes, unfortunately. I do like the variety of finishes. I'm not someone that's like super full coverage every day. I do like a lighter foundation sometimes, but I also like a medium. Like, I'm pretty flexible in terms of finish. I'm not like in love with matte finishes, but if it looks good, I'm okay with it. It also depends on the time of year for me because I am combo. If it's really hot, matte finishes may not be a bad idea for me. So I'm pretty flexible. I'm not like a strict foundation preference person. I just like things to look good and apply easily, and I don't want to be finicky with them. You know what I mean? All right, enough chatting. Let's get into applying. Charlotte Tilbury Beautiful Skin Foundation. I have the shade 3 Cool, and this guy I think I gave pretty positive remarks on in my first impressions video. I have some updated thoughts and we'll get into that as I'm applying this today. So a couple pumps here. This foundation is interesting. It's got a different sort of texture, and you know, I'll show you what the coverage looks like with those 2 pumps. I don't know, on the liquidy, oily kind of side, it's like a thicker texture to it. and there's a lot of promises with this foundation. So I'm gonna go ahead and start applying with my sponge. The color of this guy is pretty yellow, and I find that my match with Charlotte Tilbury, it's harder to match my color to Charlotte Tilbury products, so I'm not too surprised about it being a little bit yellow. But this foundation, yeah, I think I gave positive remarks on at first, but I started applying this with just my fingers and then applying powder on top of it, and I was finding difficulties making this foundation look good. I don't know why. I think the texture is a little bit odd for me, especially I guess playing with my hands for some reason. It just kind of got goopy and tacky, and I don't think it was a finish that really dried up enough, and then I put powder on top and the finish of it just did not look good. So I've been having some issues with this one lately that I've kind of been not using it as much. I think it has the potential to be good, but it's got a weird kind of thickness to it that doesn't play well with powders on top and other makeup. I just kind of found it to kind of lay down odd, and I don't know why. And you can see, like, even though this is kind of a different foundation and it's a weird formula, it gives a decent amount of coverage, which I like, and it does give you this sort of glowy finish. Maybe it's just too glowy for me. Maybe it's just not the formula for me, especially if you're gonna put powder on top. I just don't know that it plays well with, you know, a setting powder and then powder bronzer and blush and highlight. It just, not all those products play well, and I feel like the foundation overwhelms my skin a little bit and isn't a good surface for like other makeup. That's just what I found after wearing it, and I'm happy to kind of report those updated thoughts because a lot of people bought this foundation, and if you're still on the fence, I know a lot of people raved about it, but after using it for a little bit, I'm not like reaching for it as much, just playing with it several more times, and so not as great as I initially reviewed it to be. Gonna take some photos of this one up close so you guys can see the glow. Okay, so additional comments on the Charlotte Tilbury after I was, taking photos. I think even in the photos you can see the amount of glow, and I kind of get like a grease face vibe from this, just applying those 2 pumps. I think it gives a solid medium coverage, very glowy, and I think if you want to increase the glow, you could go with another layer, but the texture is a little bit much for me that I would not want to put 3 pumps of this stuff on my face. But it depends how dry your skin is. If you've got really dry skin, you may love something like this. For me, it's not my vibe. Next foundation, Clé de Peau Radiant Fluid Foundation Natural. Put my primer on already, wash my face. Not cleaning the palette, just using a different corner of the palette, using 2 pumps here. Using my sponge, and let's dig in. Now, this Clé de Peau foundation is the shade B10 Light Beige, and there is a another version of this that is matte, I believe. So this is the natural version, and that is the new one that came out at the end of 2021. So going in this foundation, and I can smell the fragrance. I don't know, when I think about the Clé de Peau foundation, this one here, I don't know if I just think of it as more of like a traditional serious foundation, and I don't know why it just kind of intimidates me when I look at the bottle, that I just don't find myself wanting to use this one as much. It's pretty nice. There's not really too much wrong with it. So I don't know how much my opinions have changed from my first impressions. I think the one thing about it that I don't like, the major thing about it, the fragrance is a little bit much, but also the price is pretty ridiculous. Like, it's a pretty finish, but I feel like I can get this finish from other less expensive, like half the price. So we're talking like, what, a $60 foundation? I can get this finish. So while it's nice, I don't know that it's really that special. And I feel like wearing this foundation all day, it had some wearing issues, I want to say. Like, it didn't wear completely perfectly in this area from what I remember. But my comment about it being more of a traditional foundation is that the good thing about that is with this foundation, I think you get a lot more of a traditional medium coverage with not a lot of product. So if that's what you're looking for, if you can get like a sample at a counter, I would try this out, but I wouldn't probably buy this again, because I don't know that this, actually I know that to me this isn't quite worth the price, just because while the finish is comparable to other foundations out there, I want it to do more for me, and it's not doing more for me. So I just feel like you're paying for the Clé de Peau name. I mean, it is really pretty. I think the color B10 is really good for my skin. I think it's a good match. I think it provides a really pretty coverage. The natural finish, I think it's definitely not matte, but it's definitely not dewy that much. Not that dewy or glowy. If you're thinking you're going to get a glowy foundation, this is not really it. I think it's a kind of an in-between foundation, kind of like the Seamless Skin. That it's not too matte, it's not too glowy, it is the kind of right in between. So I think a lot of people will be happy with that. But if you are oily, you may want the matte version of this. Yeah, I think it's a pretty finish, but I don't know that it does that many special things to my face. What do you guys think? Here's close up, and I'll go ahead and show you some photos. All right, starting with primer. Here we are. I do have my skincare on, but it's been pretty much, I've had this on all day, so I need a good refresh. So this primer is probably gonna help with the application of any of these foundations. Nice and glowy. So number one, De Chanel. I have the shade BR12. This is the Red Camellia Revitalizing Foundation, the number one De Chanel. I'm gonna start out with 2 pumps on the palette and see how this goes. I have to say, for this particular foundation, I am not excited to reach for it. I did pick it up in January this year, and it is now early March, so I haven't had it very long, but it's not on the top of my list of foundations to reach for after using it a couple times. And I don't know if I haven't like proven this to be true, but I noticed some redness on my cheeks after using this, and I haven't figured out if it's the foundation or something else that went wrong when I applied it those times. So we'll see how it goes today. I'm hoping no redness so I can be comfortable using this one again. But I don't know if I washed my sponge with something weird, or I cleaned the palette with bleach and that caused irritation. You know, sometimes it's hard to single out exactly what went wrong. But we shall see today. I cleaned everything properly. I did not use any bleach. We can rule that part out. I do not recommend washing anything that touches your face or interacts with your face, like the glass palette. Don't clean it with bleach. especially if you have sensitive skin. We're looking good. So I used the whole 2 pumps with the sponge, and this I think is a nice light layer. You guys can see I have a few blemishes here and here, and you know, I have overall redness, but I feel like most of all of that got covered up with a nice light even layer. I would say this is a light to medium coverage foundation. If I was gonna go to work, I would probably put on another light layer because I would want just a little bit more security so that I would feel better about my face lasting throughout the day. Especially in this area, we're a little bit light on coverage, a little bit of redness poking through. But overall, for the purposes of this video, I think this is a nice light layer. I'm gonna leave it on for a bit to see if I get any redness, but just looking up close in the mirror here, there is a slight dewiness in terms of finish. There's some reflection to this foundation. Because of that, I think it looks really natural, especially right after you put it on. I think this shade is a pretty good match for me. I didn't notice any oxidization or darkening of the foundation after I was wearing it. So I think this is a nice finish. If you want full coverage, I would maybe want to add at least another layer or 2 because this is on the light side. It has a nice natural sheen. I would certainly need to powder this one to make sure I don't get too much shine. If I get warmed up or towards the end of the day, I usually have a little bit of shine, and because this isn't a matte foundation, I would want to make sure I powdered. Even though I could go out, like if I'm doing errands, something quick, could wear this without any powder because it looks nice and glowy. It's just the longer it's on my skin, the more my skin naturally just glows with oil, and that sort of comes out and mixes with a glowy foundation. For me, it's not my personal preference to have that much oil, so I would tone it down with a little bit of powder, but so far it's a really nice finish. So I'll go ahead and show pictures up close. Alright, so I took some photos up close, and I have some updated thoughts from earlier because I also like waited a little bit to see if I had any redness. When I was taking pictures in a right by the window, so in slightly different light than what you guys are seeing, I see a little bit of underlying redness coming out of from under the foundation, which I don't love. I don't know if that's my skin kind of reacting to the foundation in a bad way. It does contain fragrance. I don't know. Something about this foundation makes my skin look a little bit red, and you guys probably won't notice it. It's very slight, but I see that it's there. But I mean, despite that, everything else I think looks okay. It's not a huge reaction. It's not like bright red like I saw before, but I feel like there's a little bit of something here and up here. So I'm not like jumping at like I said before, I'm not like jumping at the chance to use this a lot because I've noticed some interesting redness happening on my face. So I'm gonna move on from this guy because I don't have much else to say. All right, moving on to the next foundation. I'm again reapplying the primer. This time I'm not going to reapply my skincare underneath, so it's just going to be primer, which I think should be okay. I just wanted to make that note. All right, this next one is the Eldridge Seamless Skin Foundation. I have the shade 2 here. Now this comes out in smaller amounts, so I'm going to do more than 2 pumps because each pump I would say is an equivalent to maybe half a pump, and the bottle's a little bit strange, so I'm just gonna, I might have put a little bit extra on there. And again, using the sponge, cleaned my sponge, cleaned my palette, cleaned my face. Let's dig into the Seamless Skin. So this one is, I also believe, about a medium coverage foundation. And this one's designed to be a little bit different. It's a little bit different of a formula texture. So I'm just slapping this on. This one is, I wouldn't say a perfect shade match. I think it's a little bit light and a little bit yellow tone, not quite the coolness that I need from my pink skin. And I'm gonna use all the product on here. This one I bought the foundation brush to go with it, the Eldridge one. And I find that the brush works really well with this one, but I still need to use my sponge on certain areas of my face. But today I'm just using the sponge everywhere. Looking up close, make sure I have every area covered. A really, I would say, light to medium coverage again. This foundation is more, I would say, at least with just these two, you know, this layer. It's not a heavy layer, although this one is buildable. I think this finish is, I don't know, a satin matte. It's not matte, but it's definitely not glowy or reflective or creates much of a shine, I would say. It's right in the middle. So I think a lot of people will like that about this one. It's not swaying too much one way or the another. I mean, if you're dry, like if you're on the extremes, I'll say, of the skincare, of the skin types, like if you're really oily or really dry, something in the middle may not be quite right for you. But if you're combo like me, you may like this one because it's not too glowy, especially if you're gonna wear this all day long. I would say, yeah, like a semi-matte or slightly satin finish. This one's really comfortable, but yes, it's much actually less glowy than the number one to Chanel foundation. Interesting. I would say it's very natural looking light finish that I put on. I can still see my skin underneath, my blemishes, my redness. So I wouldn't say like you can just use a light layer and expect full coverage. That's not really gonna happen. But I think I could definitely add more and get a bit more coverage out of this one. Just updates from my first impressions on this seamless skin. I really like this one and I have no issues reaching for it, especially when I want more of a typical foundation. I like the finish of this one a lot. All right, anyways, so I think, so I noted that this seems a little bit more of a less dewy finish, and I just occurred to me, well, that might have to do with me washing my face before applying this and pretty much starting out with a dry blank canvas besides the primer. So because I had no skincare underneath or sunscreen and I hadn't been wearing that skincare all day underneath this, that might have to do, I mean, that does have a big influence on the finish of this foundation and how it's gonna look on the skin. So I have a feeling if I have all that skincare on before I put this on, this foundation might look slightly dewier because of that. So just want to caveat that right there. I think, you know, it's just a message of what your skin is like, what time of day, when you washed it before you apply a foundation really does play a big part in how it's going to look, how it's going to wear. So mileage may vary. But as I was saying, like overall really positive thoughts on this foundation. Wearing it several times, having it for a couple months now, I have really just positive things to say about it. So I guess that's it for that one. Okay, so I took some pictures and I walked back to my seat and I dropped my mirror and I forgot it was on the floor. I just broke my mirror, I stepped on it. All right guys, so I ranked those foundations from least favorite to most favorite after using these foundations several times and giving you like my updated thoughts on them. You know, all of these have slightly like different goals in mind in terms of finish and all of that. I can say without a doubt, choosing between all of these foundations, this one I would say is the most foolproof and easygoing everyday wear. Like, I have no hesitations reaching for this one. This guy is more like a typical foundation. You know, it's got a nice finish. It's not too glowy. It's not too matte, but it's more on the typical like medium to full coverage foundation. So I feel like if I am going for a full day of makeup, I want it to last. I may reach for this one. I did have some wear time issues with it, like not looking so pretty at the end of the day. Like, I feel like it could wear better. But I think overall, like, it gives a nice, really pretty finish. I just wouldn't like recommend it. But in terms of like, it's already in my collection, I'm not gonna get rid of it. But I just know reaching for this, I'm in for a little bit more work in kind of making my face look pretty throughout the day. So that's my only caveat for those. These guys are on the glowier side. This one I think slightly edges out this one just in terms of finish. It's a little bit more wearable for me. This is a little bit too much greasiness for me, to be honest. So that's kind of my roundup summary of my rankings. I hope you found this to be helpful. If you haven't purchased these foundations yet, you're thinking about them, there's no wrong time to purchase a new foundation. These are all new-ish. They aren't the newest of new, but a lot of people have tried these out. These are pretty popular, and they are all high-end. So if you're looking to invest in a foundation, I think there's so many out there to choose from that you want to consider, like, the finish that you're going for. Make sure you pay attention to the descriptions, what the foundation or the brand is about. Make sure everything kind of aligns up for you. Also, if you guys can get a sample before you buy, I highly recommend, especially when you could be paying upwards of $100 for a foundation. Let me know your thoughts, comments, questions below. If you like this video, click the thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.